Everyone remembers Hurricane Helene. It wasn't just a storm, it was a national event. It tore through North Carolina, causing billions in damage, taking lives, destroying homes. But what most people didn't see was what it did to a single mine in a small Appalachian town. Spruce pine, the source of up to 90% of the world's high-purity quartz, was forced to shut down. The impact? Over $30 billion in disruption across the global semiconductor industry. Because quartz isn't just a rock, it's the foundation of a $600 billion global chip economy.
That quartz being mined out of the mountains, they're able to process it and make it into crucibles and silicon wafers that go into semiconductors, computer chips, electrical cabling. It is an essential need to build things that we use in the modern age.
And yet, instead of protecting this vital supply chain, the Trump administration is quietly strangling it through bad policy, tax cuts for the wrong sectors, and complete climate denial. This is the hidden collapse no one is talking about. And in the next few minutes, we'll show you how one storm, one stone, and one set of political decisions could cost America its technological future. In the days after Hurricane Helene, news coverage focused on destroyed neighborhoods, flooded streets, and overwhelmed emergency services. But hidden in the footnotes was a short mention: spruce pine mining operations temporarily suspended. That single line meant far more than most realized. Spruce Pine, North Carolina, is the only place on Earth that produces ultra-pure quartz used in chip-making furnaces, photolithography chambers, and wafer molds. Without quartz, there is no wafer. Without wafer, there is no chip. And without chips, the modern world stalls. Helene flooded the mines, blocked mountain roads, and knocked out critical power infrastructure. Production halted for weeks. The disruption impacted supply chains linked to semiconductors, solar panels, defense systems, and medical devices, totaling over $30 billion in economic fallout. But what happened next wasn't just natural disaster recovery, it was political negligence. Because rather than launching a coordinated recovery, the federal government stayed silent. And Trump's policy machine kept moving in the opposite direction. In the months following the storm, quartz producers faced mounting costs and zero federal support. There were no subsidies, no climate resilience packages, and no tax relief. Instead, what they got was a triple blow. First, the Trump administration removed key mineral production incentives under Section 45X of the Inflation Reduction Act, cutting 10% tax credits that were helping companies modernize quartz refinement. Second, Trump's renewed reciprocal tariffs added new 145% tax burdens on imported semiconductor manufacturing equipment, including quartz processing tools from Japan and Germany. And third, his Department of Commerce quietly launched a Section 232 investigation into imported refined minerals, including those used in high-purity quartz. That move sent prices soaring and triggered shipping delays. As a result, what began as a storm-induced disruption became a prolonged industrial bottleneck. Quartz purification companies couldn't rebuild. Chip makers couldn't plan. The dominoes fell. Intel slowed expansion in Arizona. Micron delayed next-gen fabs. Medical device companies from Ohio to New Jersey reported delays in critical components. And all of it traced back to one thing: a material most Americans have never heard of, and a government that never bothered to protect it.
At a factory in Youngstown, Ohio, production lines sit still. Kevin Morales, a plant supervisor for a precision medical device company, walks past rows of idle machines. His team used to manufacture surgical scanners shipped to hospitals across the Midwest. Now, orders are backed up 6 months. Not because of a lack of demand, but because a single quartz component used to mold chip wafers is no longer available in time. "We lost $6.2 million in contracts this spring alone," Morales said. "Our supplier couldn't get the quartz, and that delayed our chips. The hospitals canceled." Across the country, thousands of small and medium manufacturers faced the same ripple effect. In Texas, a defense optics startup delayed a federal contract by 8 months. In California, a solar firm suspended its newest product line. All pointed back to quartz and the storm that disrupted it. But more than that, they pointed to a system that failed to recognize what was truly essential. Because in Washington, There was no strategic response, no recognition of spruce pine as a national security site, no effort to fast-track rebuilds or stockpile quartz reserves. Instead, there were new tax threats, more trade barriers, and rising uncertainty. To Kevin, the message was clear. It's like the government didn't even know what quartz was, and by the time they realize it, it might be too late. Quartz isn't just important, it's irreplaceable. It's used to grow silicon crystals at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, to shape the furnaces where wafers are born, to channel lasers in photolithography. Without quartz, the entire semiconductor process breaks down. And when that happens, America doesn't just lose chips, it loses time, it loses advantage. Cars don't roll off the line. Drones don't fly. Satellites don't launch. Missiles don't lock. Hospitals don't scan. The U.S. defense sector alone relies on over 17 categories of chips built using quartz-based processes. And there is no backup source. China doesn't produce quartz at spruce pine's level. Australia's deposits are years from production. No synthetic alternative exists at scale. And yet, in 2025, America still treats quartz as just another commodity. No reserve stockpiles, no resilience plans, no strategy, just silence and a widening gap between political slogans and technological reality. On paper, the Trump administration claims to protect American manufacturing, to defend domestic industries, to bring supply chains home. But behind the slogans is a series of decisions that have systematically dismantled one of America's most critical industrial advantages. The quartz collapse didn't come out of nowhere. It was years in the making. In 2017, Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Climate adaptation funds were slashed. Disaster response budgets were redirected. Spruce pine, sitting in a flood-prone Appalachian Valley, never received resilience funding. Then came the tax code rewrite. Provisions that once supported rare earths and strategic minerals like high-purity quartz were erased in the 2025 omnibus tax deal. At the same time, Trump's trade war resumed. The White House announced a new wave of tariffs, 55% on Chinese tech imports and a staggering 145% on semiconductor-related equipment from Asia and Europe. That included machinery needed to purify quartz. Firms in North Carolina couldn't afford replacements. Imports stalled. Investment dried up. It was never about the quartz. It was about what the quartz made possible. Innovation, precision, security. And now, fragility. One storm was enough to expose the cracks. One administration's blind spots may have widened them beyond repair. Because the truth is, when a government stops understanding what makes its country strong, it starts weakening it from within. Not with tanks, but with indifference. Not with laws, but with neglect. So the question isn't just whether quartz will come back online, it's whether America still knows what actually matters, and whether it will protect the small, invisible things that hold the future together. Meanwhile, no one in the administration declared quartz a national defense material, despite repeated warnings from the Pentagon and private industry. Instead, the focus remained on headlines, on border walls and bailouts.
And while the country watched cable news, the stone that held our tech world together began to vanish from the map. It was never about the quartz. It was about what the quartz made possible. Innovation, precision, security, and now, fragility. One storm was enough to expose the cracks. One administration's blind spots may have widened them beyond repair. Because the truth is, when a government stops understanding what makes its country strong, it starts weakening it from within. Not with tanks, but with indifference. Not with laws, but with neglect. So the question isn't just whether quartz will come back online, it's whether America still knows what actually matters and whether it will protect the small, invisible things that hold the future together.